Aloha. Such an honor, such a privilege to be here with you and just to stand in this sacred place with such a mission where diversity is praised. Wouldn't that work for the whole world if we just got into that vibration? Diversity is praised and we feel and we experience harmony and peace and love and endless creativity. And so thank you, Duke, for standing in that. I came in today and I have to tell you, if you're a guest minister in a time frame that's several hours different than you live in, and you walk in and 100, 200, 300 happy people are leaving the church, as you're walking in, there's that moment. Thinking, oh wow, missing your church, but I bet it was good. Especially they seem so happy. And anyway, I do want to say aloha. Because my car and all my blessed possessions are on a boat on the way back to Maui. I've had just the best time in Seattle, and last week they named Richard Held, who many of you know, music director, and started when he was 23 years old at Owen Park, is now an ordained minister, and unanimously chosen as their minister. So here I am with you, and what a joy, what a joy. I love to say aloha. I haven't been able to say it for 2 years because when you say aloha, you have to breathe and almost smile. It's really hard to say aloha with a frown. So turn to somebody and just say aloha. Turn to somebody else and say aloha. Aloha, because we're talking today a little bit about breath. Jesus spoke Aramaic, which is very similar to the Hawaiian language. It was a language rooted in the earth and the seasons. It was a language that required breath. It was a language that every word evoked an image, a process. It wasn't German, which was precise and excellent for science. It was the language of poets and love and connection and communion, as is Hawaiian. And so it's wonderful for me because I love the Aramaic studies and the traditions and teachings of Jesus. How many of you read the Prayers of the Cosmos or any of the Aramaic work? Well, good that I get to introduce it because Jesus didn't speak Latin or Greek. He never said Father. He never said Papa. When he talked in the presence of the infinite, he said Abun de Bashamaya. Say that with me. Abun de Bashamaya. You can't say that with a frown on your face either. You can't say and complete it without taking a breath. It's a language of breath. And so it was at the time Yeshua ben Joseph was teaching and walking the earth. Aramaic, which is still a living language on the planet, that language that he spoke was that language of breath, of connection, of communion. And I think it's interesting because aloha, which means ah, say that with me, ah. Why did you breathe a little? Because breathing is life, right? Are we having a ring or is it just me? Just me? Okay. I can do a handheld. I have a very low voice and sometimes this happens. Okay. Are we on this? Thank you. Praise God. Thank you, Jerome. Jerome, thank you. Thank you. So, you can't say it. From the very beginning, from the first light, lo, forever, not a long time, forever. From the very first light, forever, I share the very breath of the divine with you. That's one of the many translations, but that's a literal translation of the word aloha. If from the very beginning of time, forever, we're going to share the breath of the divine, would it make sense to fall madly in love with you right now? It would with me. If you're going to be together for a long, long time, how long do we want our differences to be important to us? So when a Hawaiian or a person that's in that aloha energy walks up to you and they say, aloha, imagine them saying, from the very beginning of time throughout all creation, we share the breath of the divine, so of course, I love you. And when a Hawaiian says, I love you, do you know what it translates literally?
When they say I love you and you hear I love you, what they're saying is I'm happy with you. I'm happy with you. How many of you, when you say I love you, you're saying to people, I'm really happy with you? Turn to somebody right now and say, I'm really happy with you. See what happens inside of you. I'm really happy with you. Open up your heart, soften your eyes. I'm really happy with you. Because the Spirit flows in life. And that's the breath. Aloha in Jesus, aloha. The great all that is forever. Aloha. And he didn't do anything or go anywhere unless he heard the guidance from the aloha, the great law. And so I love the Aramaic teachings because it reminds me to go back into the breath. And we're told that the seminal teachings of Yeshua ben Joseph, Jesus the Christ, is found in the Sermon on the Mount. I know that's no information that's new to any of you. But when you just listen to the Aramaic translation, it somehow expands the awareness of this wonderful teaching, this great lover of humanity and lover of God that we are way-shower and best friend, Jesus. So I want to start just a minute with the Beatitudes. We don't have time, of course, to go through all of them today, but I just want to read a couple of them in the Aramaic and see if it interests you and excites you in terms of deepening your awareness of presence and the power of Spirit in you. The first Beatitude is one you've heard all your life. Blessed are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Has anybody ever wondered what the poor in spirit means? Or am I the only one that read that? And the best translation was blessed are the humble. But in Aramaic, that word, it's a poor in spirit, is an idiom. It's like if I stood before you and said, I don't have a leg to stand on. Would any of you think my legs were missing? And you wouldn't even talk to anybody about that, would you? You'd say, wow, what she's saying, what she's believing probably isn't going to work, right? Or if I said dessert last night was to die for, how many of you want to know where I ate so you could go down and die? No, so idioms evoke a picture in our minds that really don't have much to do with the words that are lumped together. And the idiom, blessed are the poor in spirit, in Aramaic, it translates as a feeling tone of blessed are those whose home base, who are grounded, whose place of resting is a luminous sphere. Can you imagine trying to explain quantum physics to somebody 2,000 years ago? The oneness of all life. Blessed are those who rest in silence, who are breathing oneness with the divine. For theirs is, we hear kingdom of God, we could easily say Christ consciousness. Theirs is pure awareness. Blessed are you, whose resting place is the silence. And unity's starting place, and returning place, and strength is in the silence. In the silence, all is revealed. Myrtle Fillmore said, here in the silence, not only do I experience the very presence of the divine, but here in the silence, I discern exactly what I need to know. Let me ask you, is anybody noticing changes taking place on the planet? Weather, finances, anybody feeling a lot of turmoil, and if you're in the silence, if your resting place is in pure awareness, you will always be on the front end of change. Is that a good place to be when the world is changing before your very eyes? On the very front end? At our ministers' conference, we have our chair of the board and our chair of the organization, Donna, and Julie Armour back there, okay? Would you stand there, head of the ministers' organization, and their home church is here. So thank you. Thank you. And I don't know if this was in Julie's talk or in Mary's talk, but it was the idea that I remember precisely. They asked Wayne Gretzky, anybody know who the greatest hockey player of all time? Certainly we'd get him up there if you have a favorite. He'd be in your top 5 or so, wouldn't he? And they said, what's your key to your success? I mean, you're clearly heads above everybody else. And they all train, and they all work out, and they all skate pretty darn well, don't they? And you know what he said the key to his success is? I always skate to where the puck is going. Can we pause just a minute and think about that? How many of you spend a large part of your day talking about where the puck is? And how many of you spend large parts of your conversation looking back to where the puck was? And how you didn't like somebody's pass off, or you didn't, anybody, I'm not talking to anybody you know, because I know you guys don't do that. But when Jesus said you're the light of the world's changing, silence places you in the front end of change. And that's probably the greatest gift you'll get. It also refines us, it changes us, it makes us whole. So, I think I got a little lost with hearing myself when I started talking through the other thing. So I want to start with the joke. Joel Goldstein always starts with a joke. And he's got 45,000 people on Sunday, so I got to start with a joke, for goodness sakes, you know? Go with success, right? But it's a part of this talk. That's why I realized I have to go back and pick it up. Have you ever noticed that? Did you ever get a little ahead of yourself? Okay. So, a girl has a recurring nightmare. And it's one of those nightmares, and maybe some of you had it, where your heart palpitates, where the nightmare seems so real that when you wake up, it's like you were in it. Does anybody remember any of those? So the dream she has night after night is this dragon is chasing her. And he's chasing her and breathing fire, and she's panting. She wakes up every night with her heart palpitating, sweat, right before he catches her. One night, she's running as fast as she can go. The fire's breathing fire, and she's scared. And this time, for the first time, the dragon catches her. And she looks up terrified. And the dragon breathes fire, and she says, "Are you going to kill me?" And the dragon puts her down and says, "Well, I don't know, it's your dream." And that's the point of where we're going here. Heaven on earth is our dream. It's up to us to create it. And if we don't spend time in that first beatitude, blessed are the poor in spirit, no, blessed are those who are rooted, grounded, whose home base is the silence. Why did Unity go from a rented building with a pretty ordinary couple to a worldwide movement? Because Vernon and Charles stayed home in the silence. And the world is changing. There's 7 billion people now waking up, and every one of them has access to the pure awareness and love of God. Doesn't that excite you? It really excites me. By whatever name you call God, when you sit in the presence of the infinite, you're home, and you'll be guided, and you'll be blessed. And so the second beatitude is one we've all heard, and it's a good one. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Isn't that good news? Is there anyone in here that has not experienced a deep loss? Someone you love, some situation where you had a deep grief. Be really unusual. Because the experience of your life is people we care for, dreams we have fall apart. They die. And so blessed are those who mourn. But in Aramaic, it means so much more than you'll be comforted. This love, if you've ever practiced the Buddhist faith, loving kindness is the awareness of this presence. That is, its essence wraps around you whatever you're going through. So if you're going for a race and you're going to win, that presence is the wind beneath your wings, the energy to keep going. When you walk through the dark night of the soul, that presence is compassionate and kind. It takes whatever form your soul most needs to move forward. This presence is always there. Blessed are those who are willing, but this really makes sense to me. When you go to understanding Aramaic, blessed are those in emotional turmoil. They shall be united inside by love. If you spend time in the silence, right? Healed are those who weep for their frustrated desires. They shall see the face of fulfillment in a new form. That's the promise of presence in us. And I like this one because this could apply to some of you, but it does apply to me. Tuned to the source are those feeling deeply confused by life. They shall be returned from their wandering. Have you ever wandered away from Spirit, got fascinated by some new form, some new adventure, maybe a new relationship, and staying in the silence, coming back to presence? Because we need to know all the time, in every situation. Roger Teal on the same cruise where I heard the story about skate to where the puck is, because I live with that. Skate to where the light is going. Roger Teal told a true story about a woman in his community who had met her high school sweetheart and married him and lived the blessed married life over 50 years. And he died suddenly. And she went through such a grief she couldn't even think of going to support group, couldn't even think of coming back to church. Roger would reach out to her, but her grief was so great. And after a while, she eventually came back after a year or so. She started going into a support group. She would attend a few things, and she met a man who had lost his wife. And they just were friends, truly friends. A meal here, a movie there. And after a year or so, very surprising to them, they looked at each other and realized they had fallen deeply in love. Does that happen to anybody? By surprise, you've fallen deeply in love with someone. Well, she came to Roger and said, we want to be married. And Roger said, well, there's a problem. Because when your husband died, you put in granite on his headstone, the light of my world has gone out. And now you want me to do the wedding. And the woman said, well, yeah, but it was time to strike a new match. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross states that most accidents and all self-sabotage, and I want to talk to some self-sabotage is you're going for a job and you show up late. Or you're in a relationship that really matters and you go out and use drugs or do something that violates that relationship. You sabotage. Does anybody know what self-sabotage is? Because sometimes I wonder, you're so involved that you're going to be, in case you know anybody, you'll tell them this, okay? Sometimes that's helpful. So I totally lost my track. Oh, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, thank you. When you miss your opening joke, it just downhill from there. No, Elizabeth, what she said was that when we don't grieve, when we don't feel that loss, we set ourselves for all kinds of accidents, self-sabotage, and many illnesses. And why we're just now learning the importance of grieving is not to stay in grief, it's to move through it and transform us and move us to the next place. And so the Beatitudes are really a way of living, a way of being present to the divine. And so the next Beatitude, which I know that you've heard, and I'm just going to very quickly share one because this one has so much meaning for me. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And that's one that we really need to understand because it's been retranslated, blessed are the gentle. And who doesn't want to be in the presence of gentle souls? All of us, right? But this is the one that really spoke to me, that changed me. In Aramaic, it translates, healthy are those who have softened what is rigid inside them. They shall receive physical vigor and strength from the universe. Softening what is rigid inside us. If any of us have that right and wrong, they're wrong, I'm right, or vice versa, because sometimes we beat ourselves. It's rigid. And life is fluid, is it not? And we're all growing and we're all learning. When I dropped that, because I had just radical opinions about everything, and they were goofy because I really hadn't examined them deeply. But once you start to soften, you become a presence, a place where people can come into. And one of the things I noticed, if you've ever watched a good ball player, outfielder, catch a ball, have you ever seen an outfielder when a ball's coming to him, just go, and it's coming, maybe if he's the catcher, but even if he's the catcher, he's going to be able to pull back. But if you watch a good outfielder, what do they do when that ball comes to them? They've got soft hands. They go with that, they catch it, they bring it in. And so it is when we move through life and people come into our field, and maybe they come in a way that we're not ready for, or maybe they're not fluid and doing the dance that we want to do. if we can soften and receive them, then we create an opening for divine friendship, divine dances. And so this whole Beatitudes is a way for us to move through our spirit, to begin to dance with life and live life fully without rigidity. And it's all there in the teachings of Jesus. So blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who plant seeds of peace all the time. We live in a world that is changing, that's growing, that's evolving. What was true in truth is always true. But what was true in facts is changing every time we look at the stock market, isn't it? Every time we get a weather report, we see that change. This is the time where it's going to be important that we all have a direct access to the divine, where we all can listen to the presence. My friend Marge Bredd has a wonderful community in Tustin. And she's taught her people so beautifully to be present to what is. And a grandmother came to her last year, maybe 2 years ago now. So thrilled because her 13-year-old granddaughter, we have any grandparents in here? Let's see, did I see? Okay. Imagine your 13-year-old grandchild who's been chosen to play in the symphony, at the symphony level in the county, Orange County, California. Big, big deal. 13 years old, and what they do every year in Orange County is they take the best musicians from the junior highs and the high school and the college. They bring them together, and they get to play with the symphony and the adult chorale of Orange County. So they really, it's a highlight, right? And it reached the newspaper how good the performance was. It was thrilling. It was stellar. And grandmother took the whole family out to celebrate this amazing accomplishment of a 13-year-old playing with an adult symphony and the music being exquisite. And she looked at her 13-year-old with her parents around and all the other kids, and she said, you know, it was stellar. It was stunningly good. But how in the world did you and your mother and family find time to rehearse, to bring something together that would be so amazingly wonderful? I mean, you all work. How did you get the kids there? It must have taken months and months and months. When you see something really amazing, don't you think that? Like, how did they ever put it together? And here is what the granddaughter looked at her grandmother and said, Grandmother, that's not how it works at all. How do you learn from our kids? That's just not how it works at all. That 13-year-old said to her grandmother, Grandmother, you learned your part very, very well. You practiced your gifts, your talent, your part, so you are a master. And you simply keep your eyes on the conductor. And you and I, in a world that is changing, none of us have the big job, right? That's God's. But each one of us have gifts. There's not one of us sitting here on this planet today that isn't gifted, that don't have parts to play. It says in Corinthians that every one of us have gifts. All of our gifts are equal, and here's the point we really want to hone. Every gift is essential for the awakening of humanity to its full magnificence. Every gift of 7 billion people is needed. And all of us have access to the divine through the breath, through the quiet. What I love about your community is whether they're Buddhist or Baptist, whether they want to sing it or sweat it, whether they want to do it through yoga or come and sit in pews. Well, not in pews, but you know what I mean. It's all God, and it's all good. And it's only as we access the divine in us that we prepare ourselves to create that world that is worthy of our children. And it is our dream. It is our dream. Touch your heart and say, it is our dream. We're the ones that are going to live in the new world. As my friend Howard Caesar says, it's all the way to heaven, one way. And it's one way all the way south. There's only one way to heaven, and that's through love. And that's through your spiritual practice. And that's your dream. Or it's one way south. And you choose where we want to go. I'm going to heaven. How about you? Aloha. So, because Duke told me we move into a moment of silence. So could you just take a breath? Breathe into the heart. sweetness. Love is my decision. And remember back to that amazing organ that we played that music, and we all went deep into our hearts, and even deeper into the oneness. Sitting here today are spiritual giants. We're grateful for everyone. Here in the silence, in the quiet. Not only is it revealed to you everything you need to know, at exactly the moment you need to know it. The positions you to be in the front end of change, to be a beneficial presence, but it's our practice that allows us to be that opening wherever we go. And so to every one of you who said yes, every one of you who's practicing, every one of you who every day before you get out of bed, tune into the infinite within you and say, here I am, God, use me. And for all of us who have a little piece of a great awakening, join me in dedicating our time and our effort to learning our part very, very well. To softening the rigidity in us that thinks it has to be this way or that way, and coming into a time of praising diversity, allowing harmony and peace to reign, for this is the divine order of the world. And so our resting place is in God. And bless you who have the audacity to believe in abundance. Bless you, the Beatitudes say, who have the audacity to believe in peace. Bless you who plant seeds of peace every single day, right where you are, in the gifts that you have, in the passion that you are. To the infinite be the glory. Heaven is our home. Amen. All woman, and so it is.